All right, welcome everyone to today's lunchtime session webinar. I'm coming to you live from the Livestock SA office. My name is Emily Buddle. I'm the Senior Project Officer here at Livestock SA, and I am responsible for managing the Farm Business Resilience Program as part of the Future Drought Fund. So the AgriSilience program is the broadacre program under the Farm Business Resilience program of the Future Drought Fund, and is being delivered in conjunction with Grain Producers SA. The program is designed to bring producers together for a series of workshops to build knowledge, skills in business management, risk management, natural resource management, and personal and social resilience. And of course, we need to thank the funding bodies who make these programs possible. So it's the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund and the Department of Primary Industries and Regions South Australia. So a large focus of the Future Drought Fund is preparing farmers and industry for the changing environment, particularly in times of drought, and to build resilience. And so hence why we're running this two-part webinar series titled, Are You and Your Business Ready for Change? So just a bit of housekeeping. Obviously, you're all on mute today, but we certainly do encourage you to ask questions. So at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. So we do have the lovely Bridget from Ag Communicators there helping us out behind the scenes facilitating, and we'll certainly go to those questions when they come through. So I'd just like to introduce our speakers today. So first off the ranks is Carlyn Sherriff from Pinion Advisory. Carlyn is the team leader of People and Succession area for Pinion. She provides key skills in people management systems, succession, and developing workplace culture and efficiency. Carlyn is motivated by building and developing relationships for long-term outcomes, and she has expertise in business planning, strategic planning, and benchmarking. Carlyn is committed to working with people in agribusiness to build their skills and capabilities, and is joining us today to talk about her experiences with helping farming businesses with their business management, especially in the face of change. So welcome, Carlyn. Our second speaker is Jeanette Gellard from Innovative Influences. Jeanette has over 25 years experience working with people in rural and regional Australia in a number of different roles, including advocacy, stakeholder engagement, strategic planning, and public policy. She is highly regarded in the agricultural and environmental sectors across Australia, where she has undertaken numerous roles that have included evaluation, stakeholder engagement and liaison, strategic planning, and public policy. Before establishing Innovative Influences, Jeanette was General Manager with KI Natural Resource Management Board, where she led the development of natural resource management policy and planning for the region. These experiences in NRM are the reason we've invited Jeanette to talk to us today about her experiences with working with farmers and adapting their natural resource management in the face of change. So welcome, Jeanette. So I guess the whole reason we're here is to talk about change. And I found this quote to be it resonates with me quite a lot, particularly in agriculture. So the only constant in life is change. And in agriculture, we've always been well adapted to change. Change in the season, change in commodity price, but it seems that there's a need to adapt more readily to this change, and it's becoming more and more necessary. And there's a significant push from the industry to ensure it has the ability and the skills to adapt to change and to be sustainable in the long term. So the focus of the Future Drought Fund projects is to help industries and communities to be better equipped and adapt to change. So our guests have a broad and varied backgrounds, and we'll come to asking them specific questions about topics we have them here to speak on, so business management and natural resource management. But I'll ask our guests to answer the following questions in a general sense from their experiences of working in the ag sector. And just a reminder, you can ask questions as we go. So feel free to pop it in the chat box and we will try and get to them as we go along. So we'll start with you, Carlyn. What, from your experiences, is changing in agriculture?
Thanks, Emily. I think what's changing in agriculture is there's just an amazing array of opportunities out there in the industry at the moment. It's excellent that there's programs such as this that you are offering to the industry. There's also our Drought Resilience and Adoption and Innovation Hub, so the Drought Hub program. So there's a increased focus and investment in agriculture, which I think is a great change recently. Obviously, changing, prices are pretty dynamic at the moment. They're very much changing, but it is quite positive and there's lots of opportunities from it. I'm also noticing the change. I guess I probably have my radar open to it a little bit with school-aged children, but it's great to see a focus in agriculture for our young ones and the increased focus in STEM. And for example, here in Clare, the primary school is engaging with the Heart Field Site Day group. So, those types of relationships are really exciting. Obviously, changes are also challenges as well. So things such as input costs, sourcing labour, they're all those potential challenges as well. But I think it's pretty exciting. Lots of changes, change of government, lots going on at the moment, Emily.
Yes, lots and lots of change, particularly with the change from blue to red, both at a state and a federal level. It'll be interesting to see what ag policies come out from that perspective. So Jeanette, what about you? What do you think is changing in agriculture?
Oh, it's such a big question, Emily. And I guess, I can answer it at two levels. So I think there's the everyday year-to-year change that we experience, and Carlyn spoke about some of those things like prices and, weather and, supply chain issues that come about, and as we've all experienced, I think, through COVID. So there's those sorts of changes which we need to be really responsive to and have the tactics in place to deal with them. And then I think there's really some long-term strategic trends that we're starting to see as well that agriculture need, people involved in the ag sector need to be thinking about. So, food security, massive thing, and the changes there that are happening, particularly, driven by some of the impacts of a changing climate and what that means for how do we secure food security. So that sort of shift. I think our consumer is changing. So people still have to eat, always have to eat, but our consumers have access to so much information, which is not always, as we know about any topic, balanced or factual or anything like that. However, our consumers are becoming more discerning, and they're driving a lot of the demand for the way that food is produced, and a lot of our food producers know this. So the impact of consumers, I think that's a shift too. When I get back to food security, we have to feed more people too. So there's that whole push, and then we can't I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about technology as well and the impacts that technology have had. Very positively, like we're continually looking to that ag tech sector for that innovation that we can use to address some of those other concerns. So whether it's, how do we become, more productive, more efficient, produce more food for less resource, and how do we, adapt our practices to also align with, that consumer expectation. And then, of course, climate is changing. And what that means for us as producers and the farming sector is quite significant. So, if things that the way that we used to do things, we need to reflect and reconsider how we go about doing things. Our rainfall patterns, the volume of rain we're getting, the timing of rain that we're getting, the storm effects, those natural disasters. So there's a bunch of stuff that we're constantly having to think and plan about. I guess well, it sounds that there's so much going on. How do we do that? I think our ag sector is really well placed. Farmers deal with change each and every day, all the time. They've dealt with change in the past really well, and I have great confidence that they'll deal with change into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing consistent in agriculture. And I think that's what we love so much about it, is that we're always kept on our toes, whether it be chasing rain or looking for the new tech and all of those sorts of things. So I want to hear from our audience. So Bridget, if you can just pop up that poll question for me. I want to know, what do you think the biggest changes have been in agriculture? So I'll just give you a few seconds there to pop your choice in. It was quite remiss of me not to put ag tech in there, because I do think that ag tech has been the flavour of the month, particularly in South Australia and Australia more generally. Great, so we've got our responses there. So input prices are particularly topical at the moment, as we're all scrambling to put the crop in the ground. Commodity prices certainly, and climate most definitely. I shouldn't have put other there because it's not very descriptive, but business management style is also there. And I'm interested to see that there's been no change in politics, even though we had a change of government over the weekend. So thank you for those responses. Jeanette, we might start with you this time. Can you just describe to us briefly why we need to build resilience in our farming businesses and farming communities in the face of these changing environments?
I guess it comes down to that real fundamental of everyone needs to eat, and you know, the importance of agriculture here in our state and nationally and internationally goes beyond, you know, beyond question. And so the need for us to, as a sector, to be able to respond is actually really critical. And you know, I'm going to talk later this morning about, you know, the foundation of our natural resources in making that and the role that it plays, and how important it is to be managing our natural resources for that really long-term view. I think that you know, as a sector, it is really important that we consider all of these trends. Interestingly, you know, input costs and commodity prices, that cost price squeeze, it's something that agriculture experiences continually. It can be a bit cyclical in a sense, but it's a theme that runs through. And to be able to deliver that productivity and still be profitable and still maintain, you know, that the business, our ability to change and adopt and adapt, adopt new practices and technologies, and adapt to these constant pressures will be critical if we're actually going to be able to continue to support the population that we have on the island, as you know, let alone economic factors for our country and, you know, food security issues, all of those. It's a, you know, there's a fundamental basis there for why agriculture just needs to, you know, get on with embracing change and dealing with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one of the things that strikes me is the fact that all of these things change, and the only thing we've got control over is how we respond to that change. We can't necessarily influence the change itself. So Carlyn, if you could describe why, from your experiences, we need to build resilience in our businesses and people and communities in the face of changing environments.
Thanks, Emily. I guess from a business management perspective, why we need to focus on this building resilience is around the ability for these businesses to continue to grow and exist into the future. So some keys here that people can do themselves to build this resilience is knowing your own business. Farmers are pretty good at looking over the fence and observing what others do and don't do, but it really does start with yourself and your own business. So it starts in your own business, in your own office. So where is your business currently positioned? Not just at a tax return level, you know, we actually want to look at a farm business level. So what are your strengths financially, and what are the areas that you need to improve on? So look at a production level, not a tax return level. Paying tax is a great thing. It means that you've got a profitable business. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's a really healthy business underneath there. Obviously, with the price of land at the moment, a lot of people are building a lovely balance sheet as our equities are increasing. But we really need to continue to focus on cash flow. Without cash flow, we can't continue to strengthen our business. We can't employ people. We can't introduce new technologies. So you really do need to focus on that cash flow. And there's just simple things that business managers can look at. You know, do you know your cost of production? You know, grain prices keep going up. What's your grain marketing policy around target prices and selling plans? So I think knowing yourself and having a really good understanding of that is a great place to start. Also, resilience is also around having a communication plan within your business around, do we know the goal that we're heading towards? And are we, you know, I always think about it as a bit of a sailing analogy. If we were going to head off from Port Lincoln and we wanted to get to Kangaroo Island, you know, if Kangaroo Island was our goal on the horizon, do we have the right crew on board? Do we have the right structure on our ship? Do we have a map? Do we understand the weather conditions? So yeah, that's what we're looking for, rather than just simply jumping in the ship in Port Lincoln and just seeing where you end up. We know that the tides will change, the weather will change, just like Jeanette said. All those things are going to be out of our control, but does your business have a clear vision on the horizon? That's what resilience is about. Resilience is about allowing, you know, the seasonal conditions to come and go. It's going to rain, it's not going to rain, people are going to come and go in your business, but do you still have that core goal on the horizon? To me, that's what resilience is. And does everyone in your business understand what that goal is? And
yeah,
another
aspect. Go on, you finish up.
I was just going to say it.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, Em.
No, you go.
Yeah, and another core part of resilience to me would be about just focusing on yourself personally. Are you healthy? Are you healthy and happy? Are you getting time out of the business? So yeah, the three things there I've got is, yeah, know your business, have a clear goal, and make sure you're happy, healthy, and resilient in yourself. Do you have appropriate balance in your life? So that would be my areas there, Em.
Yeah, sure. And I think you've kind of touched on it, and I kind of reflect on our own farming business, and I certainly know my own answer to this question. But from your experiences, what are the areas that most farmers struggle with when it comes to building that business resilience?
I think it's probably just taking the time to shift the focus from working in the business. So we're obviously pretty focused on getting a crop in the ground. But when there is an opportunity to have some time away operationally to actually focus on working on the business as a business unit or as a family unit, to actually prioritise that time and actually sit together and say, okay, guys, is it our goal to sail to Kangaroo Island, or is our goal to go to Antarctica? You know, what actually just get everyone in the room and value that quality working on the business time and prioritise it within their business, and make checking in on at that level just general business practice, whether it's monthly or quarterly or whatever works for you.
Yes, I certainly try and drag my husband around the dining table to try and focus on our business and not in it, because he's the one that's generally in the paddock and I'm the one that's trying to do all the logistics behind the scenes, and he's got all these airy-fairy ideas, but you know, trying to execute it, particularly on paper, it's not his strength. Jeanette, so as farmers, we are environmental stewards, and we often have that deep connection to the land that we farm. In your extensive background in NRM and agriculture, can you give us some examples of what farmers should be focusing on when it comes to building resilience in their natural resource base?
Yeah, it's so true, Emily. I definitely support your sentiments about our farmers being real stewards of the land. And I guess, you know, by its very nature, many of Australia's farms are that generational, you know, farm business that's going on, which again, brings a whole range of issues, which, you know, people like Carlyn can talk about that whole succession thing. But, you know, underpinning any farm business is the natural resource that it's based on. And so looking at those assets that as a farmer you have, it's really important to be thinking about how you can maintain those assets. So your soils, your water, the vegetation, your pastures. And there are a number of things I think that people can do to actually improve and protect and enhance those natural assets. And there's I guess a number of things that we can do. Some of them relate to the natural assets themselves. So, looking at what you have on your farm, whether it be paddock trees, whether it be riparian vegetation running along your waterways and creeks, or whether it be, stands of remnant vegetation that you have. There are a number of things that you can do to protect those. So things like fencing off that remnant vegetation and protecting it, doing some replanting or additional plantings to boost it, has incredible co-benefits for both the natural asset and the natural environment, but also for the farm business as well. So I think, protecting what you already have is absolutely critical. And as I've said, I've talked about refencing. There are, certainly wherever you can, protect those areas from stock and from other, access is really important. You'll not only do you get those benefits of things like shade from those, that remnant vegetation, you'll get protection from winds. That has flow-on effects. So things like it reduces evaporation out in paddocks and in crops. It all of that natural vegetation acts as a filtration system, in a sense, to improve things like water quality. So particularly those riparian areas, if you've got creeks and waterways going through your property, then really looking after them will have incredible benefits, particularly if you're collecting water off of perhaps through low bypass dams that are sitting just offside waterways. Then you're going to improve water quality by looking after that vegetation, and of course that's only going to be a benefit to you as well. You'll improve erosion, improve it. You help decrease erosion. You'll decrease sediments that flow down your water and into your dams as well. So protecting what you have is absolutely the first step, and then looking at what you can do to enhance that. So it might be about planting more vegetation in areas. It might be about looking where your dams are. So when I talk about protecting assets, I'm not only necessarily talking about vegetation, but protecting your assets such as dams that you may already have. So to really maintain them and keep water quality really high, any opportunity you have to fence them off, to shade them with plantings, around your dams, they're all really significant ways of actually helping improve not just water quality, but also that water retention. So the more shade you can have going on a dam, the less evaporation. Again, becoming increasingly important in these times where being able to catch and retain water is incredibly important. I also wanted to touch on native pastures too. So again, it moves away from what we think of as native remnant vegetation, but looking at your native pastures. So, in South Australia, there's not a lot of areas now where we have sort of that 100% mix of native pastures. It's often a blend, but, where you can, manage your native pastures well, then they add lots of benefits too. Our native perennials tend to be really quite deep rooted. They help stabilise soil. So again, these added benefits that keep going on. It gives you, they have capacity to give you ground cover all year round, which again is going to help you with those other things like erosion, loss of, topsoil and water quality. The installation, I think, of shelter belts, they've been around for a long time now. And, I don't think we need to be reminded of the value of those. There are some interesting stats that came out of a report, which I'm happy to share the link with everyone, that show that just by having some decent, shelter belts or even protecting the remnant veg that you already have, your pasture production can go up by about 8%. Your wool production, they recorded, can go up by 30%. Livestock weight gains can go up by 20%, and your land deaths can go down by 10%. So there's some really clear production benefits by looking after those natural assets. And I guess it's about, how do we make that connectivity across our properties as well? So we'll have these discrete assets, and of course, one of the things that can really help with farm planning and looking at increases in production and really looking after those natural resources is to improve the connectivity between them. Because as soon as you can do that and enhance the biodiversity that you find on your property, again, there are these co-benefits they become better habitat for insects, so for native pollinators and also predators that are going to, you know, devour all those, you know, pest insects that we have as well. So there's, you know, some really key things that people can do, that farmers can do to really enhance those natural assets that you have and really manage them to get, as I said, those co-benefits. You know, in this particular time that we are in the world's evolution, being able to really take care of our biodiversity whilst at the same time building the capacity of those assets to become more productive. You know, it's a twin objective that I think is really important that we pursue, and certainly under, you know, the impacts of a changing climate, the more we can do that, the more resilient our farm business will be from that natural asset perspective. I might just add one more thing in too, Emily, if I can. I talked earlier about the customer, consumers being real drivers of demand for not just for the products, but the way that we produce them. And that's becoming more apparent as markets are looking for carbon neutrality in their products as well. And that is a change that I've seen come through in the last few years. And the conversations I've had with farm business owners and operators is that this is an area that they're actively pursuing themselves. They're not actually waiting for government policy to catch up. They're reading the signals from the market. They're looking at their own values around wanting, you know, these, you know, long, you know, future-looking farm businesses that can be passed on to, you know, the next generation, and people are actively pursuing that. So all of the things that we've talked about as far as looking after your natural resource management, there are opportunities there around, you know, understanding what that means from a carbon neutrality perspective, and each of those activities can contribute to achieving that for a farm business.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think one of the reflections that I've had, particularly over the course of the election, is that even though the major parties may not have had strong carbon climate change policies, I think that the free market has certainly picked up a lot of that space and is sort of driving the agenda when it comes to that. And I do like that. I like the stats that you presented, because I don't think it's often that we sit down and link those improvements to the natural resource base and production benefits all that often. I think that maybe we'll talk about putting in a shelter belt to improve our landing percentage, but don't necessarily join the connect with the improvement of the land and all the rest of it that comes with it. Carlyn, I'll jump back to you. Do you have any tips and tricks that you could give to those listening about how to build their business resilience?
Of course, Emily. You know, do all the things we just talked about. You know, it does sound a lot to do, and I guess it comes down from having that clear plan and to know where your ship is navigating to, and to everyone to understand, to have that clear plan. What's your goal? What's your vision? What's your values? Things with this whole change thing you were talking about, a good activity that you can do if you find that people are getting a bit stuck in the mud, that they might say things like, there's no point making a plan, I can't control when it's going to rain. So if you feel that someone's really operational and you want to get them out, pull them out of the mud, you know, a good activity to do is, you know, draw 3 circles inside of each other. So that middle circle is that circle of control. You know, then we've got our circle of influence, and then we've got our circle of concern. So if you're picking up people in your business and you're feeling like they're a little bit stuck and you can't get them to see the broader horizon, draw those 3 circles and say, okay, let's just identify those issues that are definitely within our control. You know, and they're all the things we've been just talking about: managing our natural resources, managing our finances, looking after our people, all of those things. You know, we can influence the election outcome, but we can't control it. You know, we have 1 vote, you know. And then concern, you know, we are concerned about the weather, but we can't control it. We're concerned about interest rates, but we can't control it. So that can just enable people's focus to shift a little bit, to break through and allow that planning process to start. And then I think that people also need to have time to ponder those big issues. And farmers are really good at this, but when you've got an issue, take some time to really dissect it and ask some questions, explore it, talk to your farming network, talk to your neighbours, talk to your peers, and really expand your thinking. And just like Jeanette said, get the data around that issue so you can really see that there's actually some quantitative evidence around making that change. So that can really help as well. Yeah, and I also talked about, planning that meeting. So I think you just need to set that date, and, these workshops that you've got running are a great opportunity to actually start that planning process. So if that's your motivator to get that planning process underway, that's great. Or you might choose to engage an external person just to break the ice and get that first meeting underway and show everybody that it's not really a big deal. Just make it everyday practice. I think that it's also important that when we're thinking about business resilience, we also need to look at risk within our business. And remember that risk, a lot of people think that risks are negative, but you need to think broadly about risk. There's upside to risk and there's also downside. So, you just look at some of the markets at the moment, there is upside risk and downside risk. So we really need to understand those risks across our whole business, from people to finance to markets to environment. And we need to identify them, dissect them, and actually come up with a strategy to respond to that risk. So that we're actually, and, from risks, from reviewing risks, opportunities can emerge. You can change your rotation. You could bring an extra labour unit into your business because you've identified that someone might leave in the future. So risks and reviewing risks, we do it here at work all the time. Reviewing risks actually creates opportunity. So I think that's a really good way that people can look at risk in a positive way.
Yeah, awesome. And I think a lot of what you touched on too is recognising the difference between a good business decision and the right business decision. I think that too often we're too focused on trying to get the right decision made. For example, we could have forward contracted some beans recently at, $700 a tonne. That was a good business decision. The right business decision we might not know until the future, and when the future price comes out at $849, close to that $900 a tonne. So it was a good business decision at the time, and it might not have been the right one in the future. But I think that so long as we recognise those differences and we're managing those risks and making those good business decisions at the time that they present, is certainly one way to move forward. And it really relates to a lot of what you just touched on.
Yeah, just exactly. Decision making is very complex, and what you've said is 100% right. Was that at that moment, have you made a good decision? So, and everyone needs to be on board with that.
Yeah, for sure. Just reminding everyone on the call here today that we do have the questions open. So if you have those burning questions, they can be as complex or as simple as possible. Throw them at our very capable guests here today. Jeanette, what are one or two easy ways that farmers may be able to build resilience into their natural asset? Or what are some tips and tricks on what they should be doing to plan to build that resilience into their natural asset?
Yeah, great question. And I think you probably answered it with the end question there, is about what you can plan. And I think managing your natural resources, having a plan is actually really essential to identify and using those opportunities that you have. So really understanding what your existing natural assets are on your property, whether it's your creek lines, the shelter belts, any remnant veg, rocky outcrops. Even understanding the soil and where you might have that perennial, native pastures already exist, having an understanding of what your soil organic matter levels currently are. So really thinking about what you have, and then really And it gets back to what Carlyn said, taking the time to think about what is it that you actually, want to achieve by improving, your natural assets. Is it about water quality in your farm dams? Is that what's driving you? Or is it about, repairing a really eroded creek line? Is it about, improving your lambing success, as we mentioned, through providing better shelter? Or do you want to have a wetland to visit on hot summer days? Because some of these, decisions that you make about the natural assets on your farm, there will be, productive benefits, but sometimes it's about your own, values and your own attachment to that land as well. So, if you have, as I said, if you're creating a wetland because that's really important to you, then that's can be a goal. You might want to increase the bird diversity. You might, be really interested in the wildlife, the flora and the fauna that exists on your property, and you might have a real passion about wanting to protect a threatened species that's on your property. And all of those are really valid objectives. It can be all of those, it can be a mix of those, but being really clear about what you want to achieve, I think, is the very first thing. And so, having that plan, mapping out, it's like, any strategic planning process. And I think this is where the value of this program really comes in, is it actually allows you to take stock of where you are and really think and visualize where you want to be, and then map out that journey and what it needs to look like. So thinking about those particular goals and objectives, and then looking at what you might actually be able to do around those. And I've mentioned a bundle of particular activities that you can consider. There's heaps of resources here in South Australia. You have your landscapes boards who all run various programs that often attract some level of subsidisation or grant to enable you to do some of this work. So really explore that. Talk to them about what you're planning and what funding might be available to support you. And if there's not funding, then sometimes it's worth sitting down and actually crunching the numbers about those co-benefits. What will happen to my productivity if I do this, and what does it mean? So and don't stop at your fence too. Have a chat to your neighbours, because a lot of our natural assets, they're landscape assets. They go across, properties, and often there's opportunities for us to work with others in the district. And, many of you will be able to think back to the land care movement that came through in the 90s and in the early 2000s, and how successful that was in actually, enhancing, protecting and enhancing the natural resources of not only individual farms, but also districts and often regions. So yeah, and go and check out what other people are doing. There are lots and lots of things that you can do. But I would start by, if you don't already, grab that, aerial photo of your property and, get out there and have a walk around and actually start to recognise the assets that you have. And then identify what some of the risks to them are. And again, Carlyn, did a great overview of number of risks. For each of you on your properties, there will be particular strengths that you have from a natural perspective. It might be, soil, it might be remnant veg that you already have. It might be infrastructure that you already have that protects certain areas. So you might already have all of your riparian areas fenced off, or you might have, run water yards as opposed to, having stock access to your dams, freely. So think about those strengths, and then think about how you can turn them into opportunities, particularly given, the way market forces are driving us to that, carbon neutrality. How do we not only enhance, but really promote the level of stewardship that you're offering, not only on maintaining that asset, but in the production of different commodities as well, because that's really where markets are looking to see that demonstration.
Yes, certainly they're all interlinked. Business management, NRM, all of it is interlinked, and it's quite hard to tease them apart and have them in their own standalone little pillars. We haven't had any questions come through, so I think we've bamboozled those on the webinar today. And it was really remiss of me not to mention that Jeanette and Carlyn are two of our facilitators. So for the AgriSilience program, so they're bringing their wealth of knowledge and their expertise and experiences to helping us deliver the program and deliver the workshops as part of the program. And I think that they actually bring a lot of value with their experiences, not just from their facilitation perspective, but from their subject matter expertise as well. Coming back to a more general question, I guess now for the both of you, and we might start with you, Jeanette, while you're unmuted. In agriculture, we're often keen to leave the business and the asset to the next generation so that they can make a go of it. So what was one piece of advice you'd like to give to those listening in what they should be doing when considering that next generation?
Oh, so that's a really big question. And I guess the perspective I bring is around assumptions, and to test that assumption that the next generation in your family actually wants to take over the farm business. So that's the thing. So there's a big question there, and it's certainly one that we tackle in the workshops is your farm business, are you here for a finite term? Is this about you and your business, and at the end of and how you then transition to retirement yourself, and then that's the end of the farm business? Or are you here for the infinite game, which is about that intergenerational transfer? So that's a real question for you to really ponder. And then having and irrespective really of your answer to that, when it comes to natural resource management, if it's not a member of your family, it will be someone else that will need to take over those resources. And so the best thing that you can do, irrespective of whether it's a family member, the next generation, or whether it's a neighbour, or whether it's someone coming into agriculture for the first time, is to actually be able to hand to them this natural resource base, which is biodiverse, functioning, has built-in resilience, and supports really high levels of productivity. So, I probably started at a different end in responding to that. I'm really, pushing that question back to people. Yeah, are you here for the short term, as in from a business sense, or whether you're here for intergenerational stuff? The commitment to that natural resource management, I think, remains consistent, because it needs to be able to pass on to whoever it may be, the capacity to, as I said, maintain a level of biodiversity, maintain a level of health in our natural resources, and still maintain that productive base.
Yes, and all of my questions have been big today, Jeanette. That's my job. I like to challenge our guests as they come in. So, Carlyn, what about you? What piece of advice would you give to those listening today about what they should be considering when it comes to the next generation in their business?
I think this is a 1-hour webinar in itself at a minimum, Emily. But I love this topic. It ties in really well with your program, and it ties in, with the future of the industry. And I'll just completely reinforce exactly what Jeanette said. After just reading Cynthia Mahoney's Cultivate book around leadership, there was a quote in there that really just resonated with me a lot over the last few weeks after reading it. Brene, it's actually, she quoted Brene Brown. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And I think that just totally summarises the next generation. There's a massive opportunity here. It's a transition both into the business and out of the business. So both movements have to be appropriately supported, planned for, and, financed potentially. So, it's just a massive opportunity here to, pass the business to the next generation, but also allow mum and dad to go and celebrate their achievements and have life away from the farm. Like, it's just, so I just really stuck with me that quote: clear is kind, unclear is unkind. It comes down to Jeanette talking about knowing assumptions and understanding the expectations. So it comes down to having a plan, getting everyone on board. I also think it's really important that when you're bringing family members into the business, that you take on a mentoring role, not a parent role. You need to, just as an employer and an employee would have a relationship as a mentor, it's skills-based and capacity-based. Where do you need to build the skills and knowledge of the next generation in a professional mentoring manner, not in a father-son manner, which can make the relationship a bit messy. And that's all about choosing the right attitude. I'm coming to work, I'm a professional, supportive, mentoring employer. I'm going to take ownership, be accountable, and take responsibility. We could talk for hours on it, but that's my summary.
Yes, I know. I'm the succession thing is a huge passion of mine. Going through it ourselves at the moment in our own farm, and just making sure that we're making sure that everyone is comfortable in that transition, as you said, Carlyn, and making sure that the business can still sustain itself within that process. So a lot of today has been talking about planning, and I guess that is the real crux of the AgriSilience program. It's giving producers the opportunity to make time to work on their business, not in their business. And so the AgriSilience program is really built on the foundation of 3 workshops, or a series of workshops, of which our facilitators step you through a process to help you develop that plan and the longer term goals, and help you put steps in place to help achieve those. But it actually helps you to identify your priorities. So it takes where you are at as a business at the moment and helps you to distill where you're at in terms of, okay, where do we want to be next? And looking at the themes around business management, risk management, natural resource management, and that personal and social resilience to help you put those steps in place to help you build your business within those realms. And so with all of that being said, we do have the next lot of workshops coming up. So we have already kicked off the ones in the mid-north and the upper southeast and the hills and Fleurieu regions. But we do have the Mallee, lower EP, Barossa lower north, upper EP and the lower southeast still to go. So I've got those dates up on the screen there. If you are keen to sign up, even if we have kicked off your region already, I encourage you to head to the Livestock SA website and fill in the form. We will keep that on file and give you a heads up when the next round of workshops are going to kick off. And just while we're here, Livestock SA are hosting another webinar at the same time next week with Danielle Lannon England from Ag Innovate and Judy Wilkinson, who is an independent consultant and FABS mentor. Again, 2 of the facilitators involved in delivery of our program, and we'll be focusing on risk management and personal and social resilience. So Bridget, if you could just pop up those last poll questions for me, that would be great. We've just got some questions around how you rated today's webinar. I have certainly enjoyed having Carlyn and Jeanette with us here today and picking their brains from their experiences. And I certainly encourage you all to sign up to a workshop or a series of workshops so you can pick their brains some more and have them for a lot longer time. Hopefully you don't get Carlyn on a tangent about succession planning for an hour, unless that's your jam. I mean, I'm not here to tell you which way or the other. And if you do have any questions, there is still the opportunity to pop it in the Q&A box down the bottom. Got a few more minutes, so more than happy to put those to our panelists if you have them. Just a last basic question, and still encourage you to pop questions in the box. If not, I will leave you to finish off your cuppa and your sandwich. I'm hoping that some of you are in the thick of seeding. We certainly haven't started where we are, but looking to kick off, hopefully, if these rains come tomorrow. So I thank you all for coming, and I encourage you to either sign up for a series of workshops or even jump online same time next week to hear from Danielle and Judy. And I'll just take the opportunity to thank Jeanette and Carlyn for jumping online with us today. It's certainly been a great chat.